you love doing something, you've done it for a long time straight, and you feel like, you know, it's time to take a break or something. Also, people hear the word hiatus and they're just like, they broke up.
Oh, right. If you're a music lover who grew up in the MTV generation, then you're probably familiar with Radiohead. After all, they are revered as one of the most impactful bands of our era, and there are countless YouTube videos covering this band. But in today's video, I'm not only going to talk about a band that was influenced by Radiohead, but they also had a huge influence on me. TV on the Radio is a band out of Brooklyn, New York, and they formed in the early 2000s. During this time, rock music was going through a bit of a resurgence, and New York played a huge role in that, with new bands cropping up such as The Strokes, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, and of course, TV on the Radio. Out of all those bands, TV on the Radio stood out to me the most. They used unconventional instrumentation and production techniques, but what impressed me most about the band is how poetic their lyrics are, and we're going to be going over a lot of that in this video. Back in the early 2000s, music wasn't this melting pot that we get today.
What the hell is even that?
Over the decades, it's become more common to blend genres and to pull from outside influences that your core audience might not be accustomed to. As a black kid coming out of Austin, Texas, the majority of my friends were listening to a lot of Houston-based rap music. We had Knock in the Trunk, Wood Grain with the Leather Seats, Candy Paint Cars, Rims, all of that. So there was only a select group of friends that I could share my love for rock music with, and it was cool because we finally had a band that looked like us. Of course, you had Jimi Hendrix, Thin Lizzy, Bad Brains, Fishbone, but this was our time. We were sick of people saying that we quote-unquote wanted to be white just because we didn't stick to one particular genre of music. And knowing that these naive teenagers at the time did not have an understanding that rock started with black culture, we didn't really care what they thought anyway. And from the sound of it, neither did TV on the Radio. With no other video on YouTube highlighting this band, I think it's time that we give them their flowers. We're going to be going over TV on the Radio's discography, and I'm going to highlight some of the songs from each album that has impacted me from a lyrical standpoint and an instrumentation standpoint. So have a seat, kick back, and let's tune into TV on the Radio. The roots of this band traces back to 2001 with the introduction of Tunde Adebimpe and David Siddick. The story goes that they met at a bar and discovered that they had similar tastes in music. They didn't know they were going to become a band, but they decided to do some music together. During this time together, they were able to accumulate 18 obscure tracks that ended up being their first self-released project. They titled the project OK Calculator, which is a play on Radiohead's 1997 landmark album OK Computer. I didn't get to hear OK Calculator when it was first released. In fact, I didn't even know who the hell the band was until 5 years later. We'll get to that. But once I was familiar with the band and went back to this album, I gained an even higher appreciation for their work. Not to stray too far away, but in 1983, Daniel Johnston had this self-released cassette album called Hi, How Are You, which is a staple in his discography. There's a lot of lo-fi aesthetics going on, it's a lot of DIY, self-produced music. All those imperfections throughout the album is what makes it memorable. TV on the Radio are fans of Daniel Johnston. They even covered his song Walking the Cow on one of their EPs. So it's very clear that he played a heavy influence on OK Calculator. The way that TV on the Radio released this record is something that I've always wanted to do, however, streaming's kind of killed that for me. Ultimately what they did is that they released the album on cassette and they just left those cassettes in a whole bunch of random places throughout New York City for people to discover. We're talking dive bars, restaurants, whatever. I don't know about you, but for me that's such a cool way to release an album. I would have loved to have been this guy at like his favorite restaurant trying to get over a hangover from last night's binge over a cup of coffee at 9 a.m. and then just discover this random cassette tape sitting next to me in the booth. Just out of curiosity, I would have popped that shit into my tape deck so quickly and then been completely weirded out as soon as I heard this.
Out on the freeway, I saw you wasted. Nobody wants you to fall except for me. Dental plan marriages, busted made except for me. Hot sex, but more in love less.
OK Calculator is such an off-kilter demo tape that it's either going to turn you off or it's going to pique your interest a little bit more to understand who this band is. So if you're not familiar with TV on the Radio and you're getting interested to dive into who they are, this probably wouldn't be the first release I would entice you to go to. Some other standout tracks outside of the opener Freeway are going to be Say You Do and of course Robots, which is kind of inspired by Fitter Happier on Radiohead's OK Computer. As a demo tape, I give it a 7 for its experimental value, but we are just getting started as far as where this band was headed. 1 year after OK Calculator's release, TV on the Radio brought in Kip Malone to join the group. Up until this point, Tunde Adebimpe was the main vocalist for the band, but Kip Malone was a healthy addition to the group. From a lyrical standpoint, Tunde was already bringing poeticism that was multi-layered and open for interpretation. So for Kip Malone to add to that with his own esoteric approach, this band was destined to be a force to be reckoned with. 1 year after Kip Malone joined the band, they would release their first official album, Desperate Youth, Bloodthirsty Babes. The opening track, The Wrong Way, gives me this feeling of an engine that's revving up, preparing for takeoff. For whatever reason, this song just gives me the visual of like this 1950s film where two guys are about to start street racing and you got this girl that's like standing in the middle of the street ready to wave the flag for them to take off. There's some blues elements in there, it's a little dirty. There are a lot of ways to interpret this song, and I guess we can say that about any TV on the Radio song for that matter. But for me, it tells the story of a black guy who is finally waking up after living a life of serving other people. And I might be completely off, but just listen to these opening lines. If you understand film tropes, then you're probably familiar with the term magical Negro. The Shining has one, The Green Mile has one, The Legend of Bagger Vance. And I'm not gonna get into this whole thing and make this video about race. That's not the point of this, but just focusing on the lyrics. The line, teaching folks to score, plays into that magical Negro trope. You know, they teach you about patience, understanding, and a guppy, and the sweet, sweet amour. But there's this moment of revolt that takes place as the song continues. But before this revolt takes place, there is this moment of questioning, should or shouldn't I? When I realized where I was, did I stand up and testify? Oh, fist up signify. Or did I show off my soft shoes? Maybe teach a little boogaloo, busy playing the whore. Damn, that's deep. But again, maybe I'm wrong. Let me know what your interpretation of this song is in the comments. Another standout moment on this album that I like to talk about is the second song, Staring at the Sun. Here, TV on the Radio are playing on the duality of sex and death. Well, at least for me. Lyrically, this song is laying down a foundation of having the most intense orgasm in comparison to your last breath on earth. It's truly impactful and was the perfect first single for this album. This album, and particularly this song, is what put this band on the map in the indie scene, but I didn't get my introduction until 2 years later.
From the depths I call your mouth for your.
By 2005, 2 more members were added to the group. Jaleel Button would take care of drums, while Gerard Smith would take care of the bass and a countless number of other instruments. The band would continue to add to their sound with the release of their official second LP. Sometime in the summer of 2006, I'm sitting down, watching MTV2, and then the commercial for their album release hits me. The song that was playing throughout the commercial was their first single off of the album entitled Wolf Like Me, and I instantly connected with it. I didn't act on it immediately, but I remember around September or so, because it was right around the time of my birthday. But when I did, holy shit. The opening track off of this album, I Was a Lover, immediately just grabbed my attention. It came in with this drum machine pattern and this horn sample that just cuts out, and then it's followed up with more horns that makes it sound a little sophisticated but dirty. This film didn't exist when the album was released, but it kind of puts me in that headspace of that scene in The Favorite where the queen is asking for a little help. It immediately dawned on me that this was about to be one of the best albums that I've heard in a while, and I wasn't wrong about that. After hearing songs like Hours, Province, Dirty World, Blues from Down Here, Wash the Day, everything from art rock, industrial, blues, everything just blended into one album that seems seamlessly put together. But my favorite song off of this project has to be Playhouses. There are a couple of songs that never really connected with me, such as A Method or Let the Devil In. But for anyone who's getting introduced to the band, I would say that this would be a pretty good starting point. However, I wouldn't argue if you started with Desperate Youth. Either one of those efforts is going to give you a pretty good indication of how this band is operating. The album was met with critical acclaim, and for a while I was like, this is their best record as far as all the pieces being put together. But somehow they were able to outdo themselves 2 years later. With the success of Return to Cookie Mountain, appearances on David Letterman, this band became one of the pillars at the forefront for the indie rock movement in the 2000s. But in my opinion, it's the release of their third studio album that really put them above everyone else. Dear Science dropped on September 16th, 2008, and this is what a lot of people view as their breakthrough album. Looking at this track list, there's not one filler song here. I mean, my least favorite would probably be Stork and Owl, but even over time, it's grown on me. I feel like I could have made a video just talking about this one album alone and do a track by track, but just for the sake of, time, I'm gonna go ahead and go over some of my favorite tracks off of this project. And of course, we have to start with what I feel is TV on the Radio's best album opener in their entire discography. Halfway Home just opens up with this energy that lets you know that you're about to go on this ride. This is a masterful display of Tunde Adebimpe's poetry. This is a perfect display of intricacy, and it's complemented with the instrumentation on here. Like, David Siddick really did a great job producing this record. By the time we get to the chorus, we get these guitar layers, right? And for me, again, me and the visuals, it gives me a visual of a sunrise. Like, call me crazy, call me some weirdo, I don't give a fuck, I'm from Austin. It sounds like new life is being born. I know it's, again, crazy, and I'm kind of losing my words on this. I should probably move on. The next song I'm going to highlight is what brought TV on the Radio to a lot of people's attention. If you just so happen to be a fan of Breaking Bad, then you probably remember this scene.
Stay out of my territory.
That had to have been like the perfect song for Heisenberg at that time. I mean, it's got the Death Professor line in there, but DLZ or Drop Landing Zone is another highlight off of this project. Tunde Adebimpe snaps on this record. He's describing the impact of warfare or an H-bomb exploding into the city. It's crazy, bro. He is dropping bar after bar after bar in this record, but my favorite line has to be when he says, "This is beginning to feel like it's curling up slowly and finding a throat to choke." It's the description of this inevitable death that's creeping in. Another highlight is when he says, "This is beginning to feel like the bolts busted loose from the lever." Or when he says, "Static explosion devoted to crushing the broken and shoving the souls to ghosts." I don't know if you listen to music or if you just skim through it, but he's giving you so many visuals to highlight this chaos. It harkens back to the Kip Malone-led song Red Dress, where he says, "Fuck your war because I'm fat and in love and the bombs are falling on me for sure." This record came out during that transition from Bush to Obama, so there's a lot of political themes throughout the project. Another highlight is the song Crying, which is a funky, cool song. It just reminds me of just being on the beach, but the lyrics are a complete contrast to the instrumentation. My favorite line from Kip on this song is when he says, "Gold is another word for culture, leads to fattening of the vultures till this bird can barely fly." I can go in so many different directions on how to interpret that, but you let me know your take in the comments. But man, this record, from Golden Age with the Prince influence on it, Family Tree, it's just a beautiful kind of this, this very euphoric type of a feeling to it. The rant that Tunde goes on Dancing Shoes, like they didn't miss a thing on this record. They had another critically acclaimed record. They're at the height of their career. They're touring. After 7 years of putting together 3 thought-provoking projects and non-stop touring, the band finally decides to take a break. They announced that they were going to take a hiatus and then they will regroup sometime in the near future. In between that time, Kip Malone drops drops his own solo project in 2009 titled Rain Machine. The following year, David Siddick did the exact same thing with his collaboration album entitled Maximum Balloon. Both albums are amazing, especially Maximum Balloon. I find myself going to that still to this day. The band shocked the world in 2011 when they came out with their fourth album, 9 Types of Light. But sadly, that wasn't the only announcement they had. Multi-instrumentalist Gerard Smith had been with the band since 2005. On top of getting the news of the release of 9 Types of Light, we were also hit with the news that he had been battling lung cancer. The idea to have a visual for every single song off of the album started with the release of Dear Science. However, it did not come to fruition. They were able to fulfill that idea with the release of 9 Types of Light. This documentary can be found on YouTube, and I'll go ahead and leave a link in the description. 9 Types of Light not only marks a change in the band's sound, but also in life. It's the first album that wasn't primarily recorded in New York. Guitarist and producer David Siddick had moved out to California, so some of the album was recorded there. Although I enjoy 9 Types of Light, I have to put it on the lower tier of TV on the Radio projects. The avant-garde poeticism that we've become accustomed to with the first 3 projects has been simplified here. We first see this in the lead single, Will Do. In this song, the instrumentation matches the message that Tunde is trying to convey. It's more accessible and easier on the ears, but as a listener, it doesn't leave you with a lot of room for interpretation. It's very direct. From a radio-friendly standpoint, this works perfectly. But don't get me wrong, there are still shades of that TV on the Radio formula that we become accustomed to with songs like No Future Shock.
Oh, mother dear, did they really cop a feel before they rob you blind?
But when you compare No Future Shock to a song like Playhouses, you can easily tell which one's going to be more friendly for radio. So yeah, they took a little bit more of a commercial approach with this project, but it's still very meaningful material when you take into consideration a track like Killer Crane. The album dropped in 2011 to positive but mixed reviews when compared to the previous 3. From a fan perspective, yeah, it wasn't as experimental, the lyrics didn't carry that much depth, but it's still a pretty decent project. Like, I wouldn't call it whack. I would just say for my ear, it's a much more safer sound. I guess I had a little bit of a fan moment with this one, where the mindset is like, okay, let me accept where this artist is and where they're going, as opposed to give me what I'm used to. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think we all have those moments with artists where we just gotta see where they are and why the approach is what it is. But a lot of things were changing at that time, not only for the band personally, but just the industry itself. At this time, they're like 10 years in the game, and 2011 was like that changing of the guard year, where we got like a lot of new talent that flooded in, and even I was gravitating towards that newer direction. The band had this segment in their 9 Types of Light documentary where after 10 years of being together, they break up, and then a year later they meet up at a diner. As they catch up, we find out that they're all just doing these mundane kind of things that really aren't panning out to their liking. The reason this is funny to me because this is a band that never really intended to be a band, so it plays on that a little bit. 2 months after the release of 9 Types of Light, Gerard lost his battle with cancer. With the loss of a band member and TV on the Radio always being this thing that was sort of an accident, it was kind of up in the air of what direction the band was going to take. With 9 Types of Light being a step down, the loss of a band member, and other band members moving to different states, it would have been safe to assume that this was coming to an end.
I want to make food with my friends. I want to hang out with my daughter. I want to answer emails. I wish I had more time and space to write, like,
In 2013, TV on the Radio released 2 singles. My favorite out of the 2 is a song called Mercy. They would follow this up in 2014 with the release of their 5th album entitled Seeds. Like 9 Types of Light, TV on the Radio continued their trend with a more accessible sound. In the first single, Happy Idiot, we get phrases in the lyrics such as ignorance is bliss, as opposed to something that's a little bit more abstract and drawn out, like their previous work. It's a great song, very catchy, but we can start to see that they're going in a more pop direction. The upside, however, is that it translates here a lot better than it did on Nine Types of Light. Quartz is a way better opener than second song. Lazare blows Caffeine Consciousness way out of the water. But my favorite song is Test Pilot. This is where the simplicity and the lyricism complement the song, but then we can get a little bit too cliche with songs like Trouble. All in all, I think Seeds is a more fleshed out album than Nine Types of Light is, but if you were gonna ask me to take my top 3 songs from both of these records, I would probably give a slight edge to Nine Types of Light. I don't know, man. When it comes to No Future Shock, Repetition, and Forgotten, I don't think anything on Seeds is beating those 3 songs, but Seeds in its entirety is a better record. I kind of feel like my own opinion is defeating me because I don't know how much higher Seeds is than Nine Types of Light, but it's just a slight edge. This release, as of now, is the band's last album. For the past 9 years, they've been staying pretty busy though, whether it's different musical projects, film, or just enjoying family life. If we never get another TV on the Radio album, then I at least appreciate what they gave us in that 13-year run. If I was gonna rank just the studio albums, I would go Nine Types of Light at number 5, Seeds at number 4, Desperate Youth, Bloodthirsty Babes at number 3, Return to Cookie Mountain at number 2, and of course we got Dear Science at number 1. If you're a fan of TV on the Radio, give me a like if you enjoyed the video. If you're just now finding out about TV on the Radio, what are you doing? Go get familiar. But like the video first. Peace.
No, save me. Oh, mercy, mercy.